I think one was definitely in Sweden. I met other cyclists that did the European Divide Trail, and they recommended me a hut, like a free hut where you could just stay. You had to do like a 1 kilometer hike a bike through a swamp in order to get there. There was like no real path, and it was just forest. But they were saying, yeah, it's totally worth it. And actually, the hiker bike is because it's like mostly used by snow scooter riders in the winter, and in the summer it's not really used. And I had this little Swedish hut at a lake just entirely for myself. And yeah, it was like such a magical moment. I really felt, I'm really like at peace. And that's what I was like looking for, this connection with nature. And yeah.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners.
Hello, I'm your host, Bella Malloy, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today's episode of Seek Travel Ride, Rebekka Wiedener. Now, Rebekka's adventures are a bit different to many of my previous guests, as they've all taken place on a unicycle. Indeed, she is a 2-time Unicycling Uphill World Champion, and she has a lot of experience in unipacking, which is multi-day adventures on off-road trails on a unicycle. In 2017, Rebekka unipacked the Arizona Trail, 800 miles of off-roading from Mexico to Utah. In 2019, she enjoyed a unipacking adventure through Scotland, which included an ascent of Ben Nevis, the UK's highest mountain. Her most recent expedition saw her complete the European Divide Trail, a route which lays claim to being the longest off-road bikepacking route in the world. I'm really looking forward to chatting with Rebekka and listening to her experiences as we get into the details of these adventures on one wheel. Rebekka, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm super excited. It's funny, listeners to the show will know that part of my tagline is about sharing the experiences of people having amazing adventures on two wheels. I'm obviously breaking a bit from that because your amazing adventures have all happened on one wheel, but I'm super excited nonetheless. But a question, and I have many of them for you, but the one that I start my show with, and I ask this of all my guests, is, do you remember the very first bicycle you ever rode?
Oh, yes, kind of, yeah. It was like an 18-inch children bicycle with like the support wheels, kind of. And yeah, I was about 5 years old when I learned bicycling.
If you were to cast your mind back to that 5-year-old, was it something that you learned and enjoyed straight away?
Yeah, it definitely felt very easy for me to learn it and do it. And I really enjoyed riding a bicycle. Yeah, until I discovered the unicycle, of course.
Actually, what age were you when you discovered unicycling?
I was 10 years old, so I got my first unicycle for Christmas. I was like thinking, unicycling, it will be so hard. I will probably never learn it. And my mom was very, very confident. She was like, yeah, that's the right toy for you. And yeah, that's how I got a unicycle for Christmas.
Wow, because I want to try and make sure that during this episode I don't ask all the obvious questions that people must ask me. But I'm sure that there's just going to be some that are unavoidable. But like, where do you even begin when you're given a unicycle? We talked about your first bike there. You could picture it as a 5-year-old. It had training wheels and stabilizers. On a unicycle, obviously you don't have that. There's no handlebars. Like,
no.
How do you actually learn the skill?
Like, I learned it in our flat. So I went from door to the wall and hung along the wall and just made my way. And then I took, and like the distances got even further. Like I tried to ride like 10 centimeters without holding on to something, then 20 and so on and so on. And at some point I was able to ride. And from that point, riding was a lot of fun.
I'm trying to think if I've had any type of experience that would give me any sense of that. The only thing I can think of, and obviously it's still different because there's two wheels, is like, that first commitment to trying to ride a bike with no hand, detaching myself from the handlebars, being upright. But I still envisage that having two wheels perhaps probably still gives me a bit more extra stability. Like, can you take yourself back to that first time learning was there that sort of tipping point or, backwards, forward, side to side?
Yeah, it was very unstable. So it was very unstable. I had to hold on lots and but with practice, your brain learns all the movements to balance. And then for me, it's now like riding a bicycle. I don't think, I just ride.
And do you ride bicycles as well?
Very rarely, like once a year. Like for my master's thesis, I rode a electrical cargo bike, but usually not really, like once a year. And then I'm like, I really prefer unicycling.
And with unicycling, there's another part of the sport here, which I came across, and the acronym is MUNI or MUNI, which is like, am I right to assume that's mountain unicycling?
Exactly, mountain unicycling. That's the main discipline I do, or where I feel like at home. Yeah, it's like mountain bike equivalent.
Mountain bike equivalent, so off-road is your thing. And if I think of the adventures that you've had with unipacking, they're all on off-road trails.
Yeah, mostly.
I guess then, if I'm thinking about you as a person, what's your relationship then with the outdoors? Because if you're choosing to be riding away from the asphalt, probably away from cities on off-road trails, has the outdoors been something that you've always particularly sought to be connected to?
Yeah, or like I see my unicycle as a tool to explore the outdoors and to enjoy it. The outdoors or the nature is where I feel most alive and where I also feel at home. And I really love to be outside. And I think we humans are not built to be inside the entire day and look at the screen. That's definitely not what I am built to. And when I'm outside, I feel alive and I enjoy it a lot.
I guess, and forgive me if I'm wrong then here, but so with the sport of Mooney, so mountain unicycling, is it just a case of you teach yourself skills on like mountain bike single track and then you develop those skills to be able to take different levels of track and different types of terrain? How, if you wanted to start getting into the sport, say you're proficient enough in your balance and you know how to ride a unicycle, taking the next step for a mountain unicycle, obviously the conventional bike, we have things like suspension and whatnot. Am I right to think suspension doesn't exist on a unicycle?
Yes, it does not exist. It does not make any sense because if you have suspension and you want to go uphill, for example, you pull the unicycle up. Yeah, you would pull up your suspension, and also when you really lose the connection to the unicycle, if you have suspension, you can't control it, I guess. I've never ridden with suspension, but no, it's not a thing.
Take me back to there's obviously the skills of learning your balance on a unicycle, and I can get my head around that. So then what sort of skills do you have to all of a sudden develop to take your unicycle off-road?
It's a slow process. You, of course, start with going on some light gravel, then you do some little steeper parts, and it's a slow development. It's not like one day you ride on asphalt and the other day you ride a downhill trail. It's like a very slow progression. So you look what's possible and you slowly get better in it and slowly are able to ride more and more. So it's a slow process. Yeah, it's not like from one night to the other.
No, I imagine it wouldn't be. And I guess, is there a particular style of off-road trail that would be your favourite? Do you seek out, say, free ride or particularly technical trails, or are you into flowy trails? Does that change?
So there's, of course, a difference between getting up the mountain and riding down. Like for downhill, it's more like hiking trails are actually like perfect, I think, mostly. Flow trails are more boring, and like freeride trails where you have like big jumps and so also not so nice. I prefer more like the technical part of it, or more like hiking trails actually.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, it's me, Bella from the show. I just wanted to let you know about something exciting. I have recently just created a new Facebook group named Seek Travel Ride, where if you are a fan of the show, you can join and we can actually bring this community more to life. It's a place where you can learn more about our guests, see more photos, chat about episodes in more detail, and maybe even pose some questions as well. It's also a place where you can share your own bicycle adventure journeys, whether you've got a photo or a blog or some videos that you want to share. Come online, say hi, join the Facebook group, and let's enjoy this community that we have built. We have a global audience here. People are listening from all around the world, And I think we can only thrive and get an even greater sense of wanderlust by sharing our experiences with each other and connecting. So get onto Facebook. I've provided a link in the show notes and you can join that community as well. Thank you. Now back to the show. Just the way that I think about there, and again, so I'm trying to connect to this myself, having obviously not ridden a unicycle. I'm trying to make the jump with how I am when I go mountain biking. So I've ridden mountain bike trails, definitely have not ridden, free ride or downhill trails. I always refer to myself as like a typical road cyclist. I'm good when I go up hills and I have no skills. So rock jumps and things like that, I often come to a pause. But if I was to really work at my mountain biking, I find that the more I do it, it becomes easier. It's almost like you need to get your mountain biking mojo back to get into the flow of a trail and its technique.
It's the same with unicycling. Yeah. I have not ridden lots of mountain unicycling in the past 2 years, so not as regular as I used to. And yeah, I could really feel it, that I'm like less confident on downhill trails, and it really takes some time to get like back to the level I was.
It's one of those things on those mountain bike trails or hiking trails or whatever, and it's the one thing that's so different to, say, being on a gravel trail or a dirt road. It's not just a physical activity then, it's also mental focus. There's thinking that has to happen all the time as well. Can you resonate with that?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when it's like technical stuff, it's a lot of thinking, and yeah, but at some point it's also like automatically thinking. Yeah, but you also have to like look at the trail and pick the right line.
If I look back at the introduction that I read to you, unicycling and unipacking is certainly one thing, but there is definitely a side to you, Becky, which is competitive, because you are a world champion of uphill unicycling, which I will admit I did not know much about either. Have you always been competitive in nature?
I've never been competitive, and I'm not competitive at all, actually. Like, I don't practice for competitions. If I practice for a competition, like training, I lose the fun of unicycling. Like, I can't motivate to go and practice. It's more like unicycle competitions are also a place where you meet other unicyclists. And yeah, I would rather like just go and ride without a competition than having the competition. But like some conventions are actually competitions. So I also compete in the competitions. So yeah.
Because that's actually a question I had for you. And that is, it's one thing to get a unicycle on your 10th birthday and then eventually learn to ride it and really enjoy it. And that's what you ride. You don't ride a bike, you ride a unicycle. But then what about when you want to go for a ride with, say, your mates? Is there a unicycling community, and how big is that? Like, are there people you go unicycling with each week?
Totally depends on. So like in my town, there are like 2 other active unicyclists. But they mostly do like more like gravel riding and easier riding. So yeah, sometimes I ride with them, but not so often. Sometimes like there was a time where we used to ride like every 2 weeks or so, but in the moment, not really. And then I have like some mountain unicyclists living next town. They are kind of my level, 2 of them. And it depends on how often we ride. Sometimes it's like every 3 weeks. Sometimes it's like half a year, not at all. And yeah, and I'd also ride sometimes with bicyclists together. That also works pretty good.
If you're thinking about it being on a trail, there would be times where being on a unicycle, potentially you're at an advantage. Would I be right then if you're on a conventional 2 wheels?
Not really. I joined from our university the mountain biking course for 1 semester. And I usually was like slower on the downhills, and they had to wait like for a minute or a little bit. But on the uphills, I was like the same speed or even faster sometimes. Of course, I was slower, but they always were happy to wait for me. So that was great.
I have a sneaking suspicion, Becky, that if you and I were to go mountain biking or on the mountain bike trails together, you'd be waiting for me at the downhills. I need to get my eye in. I haven't mountain biked for a while, and I definitely know I get to a stage where I can come up to something technical on the trail, and it's probably not even that technical. Definitely not probably to what lower level, but it might just be a couple of rock drop-offs, and I might do them 1 week, but the next week I'll just freeze and go, oh, no, not sure I can do that. Do you ever have moments like that?
Oh yeah, of course. I like 3 weeks ago when I was like the first time home for a weekend, I rode with a friend of mine and I rewrote my home trails and I was like, oh yeah, I was able to do that like a year ago, but not today. Yeah, definitely happens to me also.
It happens to us all. It's a natural thing. And you just have to, I guess, motivate yourself to keep pushing the boundaries there, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and I also like to be in my comfort zone. So sometimes I'm like, nah, I like to stay healthy and not injure myself. Yeah, that's definitely one of the most important things.
I guess then if we talk about unicycling as a sport, and we made mention of it, it's a different type of technique and a different balance. I'm guessing it takes a different physical toll on your body than just riding a conventional bike as well. Would you be recruiting a lot more of your core abdominal muscles that you potentially could just not have fully locked on and loaded to ride a bicycle? That on a unicycle, it would be critical, I'm imagining.
Like core muscles are so important. Yeah, they really build up over the time. And yeah, my core muscles are pretty strong because, yeah, where all the balancing happens. Yeah.
Obviously, you don't have a bike that's got 22 gears or 22 speed. Are there gears on a unicycle? And is that even a stupid question? I'm not sure.
Like usually there are no gears at all. Like how fast the unicycle goes depends on the wheel size. The bigger the wheel, the faster the unicycle. And also on the crank size. Like the shorter the cranks, the faster you can pedal. But actually there's one manufacturer from Switzerland produces 2-speed unicycle hubs. And for my European Divide Trail journey, I had one of those. And this really was a game changer.
And so then what sort of 2 speeds have you got? Does that effectively give you like an uphill gear and a downhill gear? Or is there a way that you could equate what that's like?
It's like the first gear is the normal gear. It's like 1-to-1. And the second gear is a higher gear. So you do 1 revolution with the cranks and the wheel would do 1.5 revolutions. So you have a higher gear and you can go faster on easy parts.
So instead of having to do a super high cadence to go the same speed and to spin out, you're traveling a further distance with a normal cadence. And I mean, normal cadence, I'm assuming that depends on the terrain you're riding, like what's normal.
Definitely.
And again, Becky, I really hope that none of these questions sound too stupid, but are you at times spinning frantically with your cadence as well? Like, it's not like a fixed gear, is it?
Yeah, it can happen if you really want to go fast and you are in a race and you're really like going crazy, like a sewing machine, like very fast. Yeah, we also sometimes call it the sewing machine. But yeah, I prefer like having a slow cadence. And yeah, like when I was a bit younger, I was really able to go very fast. But nowadays, I don't really enjoy it anymore. So I prefer having a slower cadence. So the geared hub is really definitely an upgrade for my riding.
Does your unicycle, it has brakes?
Yeah, I have a brake. So it does not freewheel. So I always have to pedal. But freewheel unicycles exist. And I actually also have one at home. But it's like 10 times harder than normal unicycling, but it's a lot of fun.
What makes it harder? Is it more that when you're pedaling, it's easier to keep your balance?
Yeah, when you are keeping the balance with the pedaling and having like it's a force to the back, kind of. And with a freewheel unicycle, you're balancing everything with the brake. So the brake is your balancing tool. So you really have to be very good at handling the brake for having a freewheel unicycle. And if the brake fails, you can't ride at all anymore. So, yeah.
So then when you went, say, on your recent trip, the European Divide Trail, did you have the brake for that one or you had your conventional unicycle without the brake?
I had my 2-speed unicycle without freewheel and I had also a disc brake on it. Disc brake is very necessary to like save your legs. Because if you don't have a brake, you have to actually apply a force when pedaling downward. That creates muscle pain and it's not nice. I had to do it over the Pyrenees because my brake was gone and not nice at all.
Goodness, I could just imagine. And actually, like when we think of the European Divide Trail, I mean, it's so big, it crosses a few mountain ranges, but you've had the Pyrenees and you also, I think when I first got in touch with you, I think you were in the Jura Mountains. So
yeah,
there's some quite spicy climbs out that way as well, which I'm sure your knees were feeling, no doubt.
Yeah, some days my knees were a bit painful, but usually they were actually fine. Yeah, that was quite surprising.
I want to get into the unipacking adventures, but before we do that, I do want to talk briefly about this World Champions. 2 World Championships uphill. What's a typical course for an uphill World Champion race look like? Is there a conventional distance to be graded as uphill? Is there a specific incline it has to cover? Like, what are the parameters?
Not at all. It's just like the organizers pick it up and yeah, that's it. And yeah, I usually have advantage on if it's like very technical and very steep and not easy to ride, because I'm like very good at this technical stuff. And if it's like an easy rideable uphill, I actually probably would not have an advantage and probably not do so good. Because I think like everyone can ride an uphill fast, but not everyone is good at riding an uphill slow. And when it's technical, you really need to be slow because you can't maintain the speed. And with a high speed, you can do like lots of climbing, but if you're on slow speed because it's technical, most people just fall off. And I'm kind of good in riding the technical stuff and picking the right line and yeah, going on steeper stuff.
Is it like a unicycling equivalent of like a track stand?
Oh yeah, there's a still stand. It's called still stand.
Still stand. Okay. It's interesting actually because like before this interview, I briefly Googled unicycling, watched some unicycling videos. I think there is a French person in Lyon, and there's like unicycling basketball, and it's like a whole world out there.
Yeah, it's like the World Championships are like an Olympic games kind of for unicycling. You have like basketball, you have hockey, you have track races, you have road races, you have like mountain unicycling, then you have like something that's similar to figure skating. Then you have disciplines like in the skate park. Then you have also trials unicycling, like hopping over obstacles and so on. So it's like very versatile.
It really is like a whole other world. And obviously Mooney or mountain unicycling is the part that you like and enjoy the most. Have you actually had a go at any of the other sports as well?
Yeah, of course. I participated like in my first World Championship, also in marathon and 10K. Last World Championships, I competed in street unicycling. It's like a discipline in the skate park where you do tricks and stuff. And I actually also got a third place in that discipline.
I must say, one of your Instagram videos I saw, and I don't know if it was for training for this event or just a general skill session, but you're in an indoor area and you're doing the equivalent of like a box jump, really, really high, but on your unicycle.
Yeah.
Again, if we were mountain biking together, Becky, you'd be waiting a few minutes at the bottom of the trail for me to catch up because your skills are phenomenal. And I always list out my guests' socials in the show notes as well. But I would definitely invite our listeners to just have a look at your Instagram and some of the reels and the videos that you've got up there. There's some really cool one actually where you're being followed by a drone, like a FPV drone.
Yeah, it was like it's a World Championships downhill qualification one. That was very nice.
When you watch that back, because it would be such a different perspective from your own visual perspective to see, that must be so cool to see.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy doing videos and stuff. And I also plan actually to do a video for my European Divide Trail journey. Yeah, it's only like a matter of time when I start and finish editing. Yeah.
Oh, I imagine you've ended up with many hours of footage to trawl through.
Yeah, probably.
Great memories to flow. Well, that's a good segue then into unipacking. So people are probably familiar with bike packing. Am I right to say that unipacking is bike packing on a unicycle?
Yeah, exactly. That's actually how we introduced unipacking to the world. Yeah. Like actually the trip I did on the Arizona Trail trip was like the first trip we called unipacking. Because one of the guys who I was traveling with, he was like, this needs kind of a word. What about like calling it unipacking? Totally makes sense. This is unipacking.
So it was like the inaugural trip. And what an inaugural trip that was. I think, were there 3 of you on that trip?
Yeah, 3 of us. 2 Americans, Corbin Dunn and Jamie Mossengren. And yeah, Jamie reached out a year beforehand to other unicyclists saying like he wants to do the trail and he's looking for company. And I was like, oh yeah, that's an adventure I would enjoy. And like I was just like finishing school at that time. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that after I finish school. And yeah, and I went on this trip.
Wow. And as I mentioned there, 800 miles. And I apologize to my listeners. I realize some people speak in miles. I don't. And I should know what the conversion to that is in kilometers. I know that it's a lot.
Like 1,300.
That's what I'm sort of thinking. And I'm sort of picturing the Arizona Trail, as I mentioned, Utah to Mexico, There's some interesting terrain that you're traversing through. I think the Grand Canyon falls in on that route as well.
Yes, the Grand Canyon. Yeah. So
Had you, how do I phrase this? Unipacking, it might have been the first time you used that term, but had you been unipacking on even smaller adventures before this trip?
beforehand, I did like overnighter in New Zealand. Like I was having for 6 months on a work and travel visa in New Zealand, and I did like overnighter there. It was not very good.
Why was that? Was it just you didn't have the right equipment, or it was the wrong track, or?
The track, I tried to ride the old Ghost Road. Yeah, it goes like for the first 30 kilometers just uphill and also lots of rocks and stuff. And I could not ride anything, kind of, and had to push a lot. And I also tried out my rack for the first time and it totally did not work.
Oh.
And yeah, so I ended up pushing a lot and I was like, that's not really nice.
Oh, wow. Because that is a question that I had there. I know, and it's a struggle that when people go bikepacking, it's how do you fit the stuff you need on your bike? And there's different setups. Some people go saddlebags, some people go fork rolls, some people have front rolls, some people have frame bags. On a unicycle, there's pretty limited places where you put bags. What did your setup for the Arizona Trail look like?
Yeah, there are not really solutions that you can just go out and buy. You really have to think a bit how to put stuff on the unicycle. But Jamie actually, he did the Colorado Trail like 2 years or so beforehand.
Wow.
And the way he did it was he had like a bicycle seat post rack where he attached a dry bag. And that's also how I started. Like I had my tent, my sleeping bag, and some other stuff on that dry bag on my unicycle. And then I had like a huge backpack with all the rest of the stuff, like the food, the clothes, the camera. And yeah, and from year to year, I changed my setup. Like I put more and more stuff on the unicycle, and I think I went from like a 12 to 13 kilo unicycle now to a 22 kilo unicycle.
That's a lot more gear on one wheel, but
it's less on the backpack. That's the most important.
Which is less on your body as well, because I've done a bikepacking trip, a 4-day trip once, with a backpack, and I've done 2 overnighters with a backpack as well because I was on my mountain bike and again didn't have the right attachment points for the gear I needed. And I can just reflect back on that physical load on your body. Like you can do it, but it's, you feel it so much. Your neck and your shoulders and your lower back is aching. When I've ridden my conventional bike loaded, whether it's with bikepacking bags or panniers, it takes sometimes a little bit of adjustment to adjust to a bike that's loaded. I'm guessing then adjusting to a unicycle that went from, you said, 12 kilos or so to, 22 kilos. That would take some adjustment as well?
Yeah, it definitely was a slow process. Like from every trip to every trip, I improved something, I changed something. And 2021, I rode through Germany. And the southern section I did on my mountain unicycle on a 27.5 inch. And when I reached home, I changed my unicycles. So I took on a 36-inch unicycle, where I got like a custom rack made and packs. That was so hard to ride. It's like a very huge unicycle, so you have to get all the weight of the unicycle also up when you mount. And it took me like 8 or 9 days to be able to mount that unicycle, kind of.
What's the dismount like from a 36-inch wheel as well?
You have time when you're dismounting.
Okay. Do you find a tree or a wall or you just jump?
You usually use the brake and then dismount to the back. So, yeah.
Is your unicycle, it's got, like we said, it's changed differently how you do your unipacking trips now, but you've got the seat rack for your tent and everything on the back, but you do also have some gear on the front as well, don't you?
Yeah, the front I designed like a bag because there are no bags available. You can't really use a bicycle frame bag. Does not really fit and
there is no frame.
So I actually designed a bag and my mom was doing all the sewing and we did like one prototype. And then the second bag I took on the trip, but there was some parts failed and some stuff was not nice. And actually when I was going through Germany, I took a few days off the EDT and like went home. My mom made a new bag and that new bag was really different again. Not very different, but like all the stuff what was wrong with the second bag were improved and this really holds it up very nicely.
There's a need to make things bespoke. specifically for your setup, isn't there? Like you said, it's not like you can grab something off the shelf.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that actually makes unipacking bags?
No. Unipacking bags not, but unicycle touring bags, yes. So there's one American guy called Kerry Gray. He did like lots of trips in North and Southern America, and he actually makes bags or made bags and like attachments. Yeah. And I also got one of those things for my 36-inch, but as I mentioned, it was just so hard to mount that unicycle. And after that trip through Germany, like the northern part, I was like deciding, no, that's not unicycle to take on the European Divide Trail. I need a different one.
You didn't have a 36-inch unicycle for the Arizona Trail, did you? You were on a 27.5-inch?
No, I was back then on a 26-inch unicycle, like my first mountain unicycle.
Which I guess then from like a practical mechanical point of view, 26-inch tubes, am I right? So from a puncture point of view and stuff like that, or are you running tubeless? Like,
I'm not running tubeless. I'm running a tube, and like actually on the Arizona Trail, we did not have any flats at all. And like we had like a reinforcement layer between the tube and the tire, and this really holded up everything, and we did not get a puncture. And actually on the European Divide Trail, I was riding my 29-inch geared unicycle. I just got it made for the European Divide Trail. So I built it up especially for this trip. And I was like riding Schwalbe tires with a reinforcement also. And I just had one flat in total on the entire trip.
That's mega, because the European Divide Trail is pretty vast. It's like 7,500 kilometers.
Yeah.
One puncture in 7,500 kilometers. That's damn impressive.
Yeah, I was like actually nearly hoping for not having a puncture at all, but somewhere in Sweden it happened. But I actually suspect that this was I had like a slight puncture since Spain, where I had to pump up every week. And I actually expect that's a slow puncture that got like bigger and yeah.
Yeah. So that slow leak just eventually it just gave way over time.
Yeah.
Still, only one puncture, that's pretty good.
Yeah. But 2 tires. I needed 2 tires. So the first tire was pretty done in Germany. So I was like, yeah, before I go up north and there's nothing, I change it.
Because what sort of mechanicals, like when there is less physical bike, I guess there's less things that could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But what sort of mechanicals do you need to think about? Like other than the obvious of a flat tire and a puncture, like what other sort of things could happen on a unicycle?
The gearing could make problems, but when the gearing makes problems, you can't continue riding. But I luckily did not have it. And then you have to keep an eye on the brake, because also when you're like falling, the handlebar hits the ground and the brake is like very far in front on the handlebar. So some occasions the brake is getting hit, and I actually had to replace my brake lever because it was like so bent and a little bit broken. But this was actually luckily I noticed it in Germany, and it was just like 5 days of riding until I was home. And yeah, I also had like other mechanical problems that were quite bad, but yeah, I made it happen.
What happened that went wrong there?
The geared hub I had, it's like a new generation of hub, and it's the first time that it comes with an integrated disc. Like previous hubs were not made to have a disc brake, they were more made to have a rim brake, and that's the first one with a disc brake. And they did not use disc from bicycles, like it was a custom-made disc just for this hub. What totally makes sense, because then you can remove the disc without like pulling off the bearings or removing the crank.
Yep.
And I just finished Spain, and the disc was like nearly gone. It was like paper thin. That's also the reason why I went over the Pyrenees without a brake, because I was not feeling confident to use a brake because I had a paper thin disc.
Sorry, I live in the Pyrenees, and I'm just trying to imagine doing anything in these mountains without any brakes. So, well, this is where you are physically then moving back to what we were talking about before and using your legs as sort of like pushing force to like slow your bike down, aren't you? So your knees are your brakes.
Yeah, exactly. And then I got like new disc shipped to me, but they were like the same quality, and yeah. And also forced me to change like brake pads every 2 or 3 days. And yeah, it was a hell of a journey. And
That would be quite expensive too, because again, 7,500 kilometers, it's not like 2 weeks and you're there. We were talking 3 and a bit months, right?
Yeah, but luckily I got like a local company called Breakstaff that made a disc for me, like a custom disc, and that solved most of the problems. And like for the southern section, I used like 16 pairs of brake pads. And
Wow.
for the northern half, I had my one brake pad I put on, and it nearly looks new. So yeah.
I'm just thinking 16 pairs of brake pads. Wow. But only 2 tires.
Yeah, it's also something I did not calculate it. So I was like, okay, I pack like 2 extra pairs of brake pads. It will last me until I'm in Germany. Yeah, but no. So that was really crazy. And I was also like the first person who put like more kilometers on that hub. So yeah, and they did not really test it before.
So you're almost doing like prototype testing on this trail, aren't you?
Yeah, but that was involuntarily. That was, yeah. I did not really enjoy it.
Oh my goodness me. Far out. Because one of the key differences then, the Arizona Trail, 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles, whatever it all washes out to, through some quite, I guess, challenging terrain.
Yeah, it was mostly single trail.
With 2 other people, right? But I feel like I don't really want to skip over that. But if we were to talk more about the European Divide Trail, which you've just done, that's 7 times the distance almost, or 6.5 times the distance, but on your own.
Yeah.
It's a different level. Now, I do appreciate that, time has passed from 2017 to 2023 and your experience as a rider and your proficiency in probably a lot of things, and even in dealing with these mechanicals and thinking of solutions when you're gear testing and you don't know that you're gear testing. But it's not like you went from the Arizona Trail and then fast forwarded and did the European Divide Trail. I may mention you did a trip through Scotland. You obviously did an extensive trip through Germany as well. Did you do both of those trips on your own?
Yeah, so I was actually in Scotland 2 times, in 2018 and 2019. I did that on my own. And in Germany, I had a friend joining for like the first 12 days. And then, but I was like mostly riding alone. And then in between also a friend was joining me for a weekend. And like the last 100 kilometers, I was like going on vacation with another friend, and we did like the last 100 kilometers together, kind of. Yeah.
Transitioning then, even on that trip, like transitioning from being on your own to with people, how was that even? Did you have a preference one over the other? Did it work well for you that you had someone to lift you up, and you had your alone time?
Like I really prefer to be alone on riding, because you can ride like your own pace. That was really what was working very great on the Arizona Trail, because we all 3 were going our own pace and we just like meeting up at an intersection. And also that was what I really liked. I can ride my own pace. I don't have to force myself to ride fast. Yeah, that's what I really like about riding on my own. And that was also like the case on the European Divide Trail. Like I was actually riding alone, but I never really was alone, because there were like lots of other people who did like sections of the European Divide Trail or did the entire thing, and you always met someone. That was great.
You're sort of crisscrossing paths or seeing people at the same campsite maybe, or
yeah,
that must be cool too, because you're sort of with your own thoughts, but in your mind there's also security might not be the right word, but there is that sort of safety net of knowing that there are others around.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was also like we cyclists and we kind of had sometimes the same kilometers we did each day. So you bumped sometimes 2 or 3 times into each other a day. And there was actually a couple, Leonie and Jan from Switzerland. I met them first in Spain. Then in France, we were like camping for 2 or 3 nights together. And then I went ahead. They had some mechanical issues. And I met them again in northern Germany. And like from northern Germany till the end of the European Divide Trail, we kind of never been more than 50 kilometers apart from each other. And that was so great, like to have each other's company.
That would be. And not just each other's company on the trail, but no doubt friendships made as well, like lasting friendships.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
It's something that I've had come up with previous guests, Becky, and the majority of my guests are comfortable in their own company. And if I ask a question at the end of each show of a preference riding solo or with other people, and the majority of my guests would choose to be on their own. But there is a number of my guests as well where one of the things that they see as a downside is they have experiences that in the moment they really wish they could share with other people. Things happen and their instinct is, I wish there was someone here that could see this or I could share this tale with. So I guess to some degree, did you feel that even with the interactions you were having with other people, you were sort of sharing and making memories sort of together in a way?
Yes, definitely. Also, when we're like camping together, like I had like, I think lots of nights where I was not camping alone, especially like in Spain. I was like not expecting it. Also, when you're like going onto a campsite, there always is a cyclist that is also camping there. They might not ride the same trail, but yeah, it changed the experience of the day. And yeah, sometimes also with Leonie and Jan, or also with other riders I met along the trail, we were like riding together for a bit and making a break at a nice spot. And yeah, you really like make memories together.
That's really, really cool.
Even though traveling alone, that's so great. Like I really love that about the European Divide Trail, because on my previous trips in Scotland and Germany, you did not really met any other people who were going like the same way. In Germany, I had like only one interaction where I met other hikers actually. There was like this connection, and yeah, this was really what I was like enjoying a lot about the European Divide Trail, like meeting the other riders, and I think that's also what like kept me going.
Yeah,
those interactions, and yeah.
And it's pretty cool to hear that, because from a trail perspective, it's fairly new.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a decade or 2 decades old. It's certainly not as established as something like the Arizona Trail. So for something that's fairly new, and I don't know whether that's necessarily what's drawing people to it, but the idea that there are all of a sudden people on this trail, there's sort of semi-communities being made by riders riding it at the same time, that is such a cool feature already to be seen and for you to have experienced.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's the first like very busy year of the European Divide Trail. Like 2023 was like the first year where like lots of people went on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can also see it when you look at the finisher page. Before that year, only 12 people finished. And this year alone, another 12 finished already. And there were more coming up.
Are you finisher, I think, number 19?
Yeah, but it's not really like the order is not really strict. So it's like, it's not, it's like when you write the email and get put up.
I see.
More like.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think I'm like about the first 20 finishers. Yeah.
Well, top 20. There you go. First 20.
Yeah.
First unicyclist, I'm imagining.
Yeah, definitely.
Winning. I love it. I love that you're a woman. I think this is fantastic. A champion. So let's just actually talk then about the European Divide Trail. We've mentioned how long it is. We've mentioned some of the countries it goes from. But from a start and finish point, is it a trail that you logically would do from south to north, or where does it start? How many countries are you going through, and how do you choose which way you do it?
So it goes from the most northeastern point of Europe, or of one of the most northeastern points of Europe, and at the Norwegian-Russian border, Grense Jakobselv in Norway, to one of the most southwestern point of Europe in Portugal, Capo St. Vincenten. And Andy Cox, the guy who created the European Divide Trail, rode from the north to the south. But I actually started in the south and rode north. And yeah, you can do it either way. But I think it also depends on how fast you're going. Like if you take 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, totally depends on. And if you're like going for like 3 months, it's good to start in April, kind of, and then in the south and then go north. So you're in the north like in August or July. So it's like still pretty warm there, but you're like missing out the heat and like the dry climate in Spain.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't imagine. And in fact, did you hit some pretty hot weather down south regardless?
No, not really. So the hottest day I had in Portugal, so I started on the 12th of May, was about like 30 degrees. And the hottest day I had with 31 degrees was actually in Germany.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, funnily enough, today here in the Pyrenees, we had 31 degrees, which I say funnily enough because we've just crossed over into the autumn season. but I feel that this is the only part of Europe that didn't really have a proper summer because we just had perpetual cloud and rain. So did you actually, you probably experienced some of that when you were coming through the Pyrenees maybe?
When I was going through Spain on day 10 of my journey, like raining started, and like the 3 weeks I spent in Spain were like mostly raining, and I like nearly each day I got like soaking wet because of the thunderstorm warnings. The trail also turned very muddy, so I had to do lots of bypasses because it was impossible to ride.
That would have been a particularly low moment. Did you ever have a moment on the trail where you just wanted to just not continue on? Like, were you ever tempted to just stop riding the trail?
Yeah, kind of lots in Spain, I would say. Because also sometimes, like, Spain was hard. It was so hard. On bikepacking.com, you have like the overview of the European Divide Trail, and it says like it's 99.9% rideable of the time. And that, I think, would mean it's like, I don't know, you have to push for 1 hour on the entire trail, kind of.
Yeah.
But that's not true at all. It was so much pushing involved, and like some parts of Spain were like very bad, and it was just did not make any sense to ride through there. And yeah, sometimes like the trail was like very nice, and then all of a sudden you turn down a small road and it got really, really shit. And you kind of also lost sometimes the way, and you're like really asking yourself, why? Why is the route going that way? Totally does not make any sense except like frustrating the riders. Yeah.
And is it mainly in that area in Spain?
I think there are some, I call them fuck-ups of the trail, like in Spain, of course, and also in France. In France was like a very hard 2 hours. It was not hike a bike, it was more like carry a bike section, where I actually felt very happy to have a unicycle because it was like big rocks and steps and stuff like that. And yeah, and also in Germany was like just a bit, not so bad, but like from middle Germany onwards, it was like pretty good actually. But like the south had lots of gnarly hike a bike sections in it.
I have to admit, I'm personally not someone that gets enthusiastic about a trail if it means I'm going to be hiking a bike for a while. I can put up with hiking a bike for a few hundred meters to connect an area, and that's the best way to do it. But if I'm on a trail which is going to require me to be doing it constantly, on and off, I get really frustrated with it because I'd rather just go hiking.
Me too.
Without my bike as well.
Me too. I don't really like either I can ride it and it's perfect. And like the hiking, like I ride a unicycle for a reason. I ride it because I don't like walking. Yeah, and when you're like walking lots, you're like, where's the point? Yeah.
And it's not easy to lug gear around, especially if you're hiking a bike. It's generally because the terrain is too steep, correct? Like uphill or downhill generally. It's never because it's flat.
Yeah.
It becomes really tricky as well. Can you think back on then some of the hardest obstacles you would have had to overcome on one of the days? Like, is there a particular day that sticks out in your mind for that?
Oh, yeah. I think in France was like this 2 hours hike a bike with the rocks and steps I just mentioned. It was just crazy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, listeners, if you could just see my face.
Yeah.
2 hours of hike a bike. Why?
Yeah. Maybe it was just 1 hour, but at least 1 hour.
Yeah, well, whereabouts in France? Was that in the Jura?
No, it was like after Arles, I think it's a town called. I don't know if I pronounce it right.
Yeah, Arles.
Yeah.
Did you have brake pads for that section?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have needed them anyway. You were walking.
Yeah, but I actually, when I'm walking, I'm using the brake also. Like I turn around my unicycle, kind of a mountain wheelbarrow with brakes. So it's actually like pretty easy to hike a bikes with my unicycle.
Yeah.
And when it goes down, I use the brake.
That's so cool. It'd be like a stability. It's like a biking version of hiking poles.
Yeah, it's really nice, I would say. It's nicer than pushing a bike.
Maybe the one time where you have an advantage over a conventional bike, would you say?
Yeah, that's definitely the one, maybe only advantage I would have, riding-wise. Yeah.
This is a stupid question because distance that you did each day would really be determined by the terrain or the weather, correct?
Yeah.
So what was like the longest day that you had on the trail, and then what was like the shortest day that you would have had on the trail?
I think the longest day, I just looked at my statistics before our appointment kind of, and yeah, I think the longest day was like over 10 hours 40 of moving time.
Wow.
But I don't know how much distance I made.
Yeah, that's a long day.
Yeah, but usually it was like around 8 hours. And the longest day of riding was like 128 kilometers, I guess.
That's a long day.
Yeah, but that was like far in the north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flatter?
Yeah, flatter and like mostly rideable.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Far out. A day which includes over 10 hours of moving time, that's a really long day. And an over 3-month trip as well. You must have been so happy to make camp that night.
Yeah, definitely.
If we were talking about like a routine, what did a typical day on the trail actually look like? Did you have like a routine of how early you would get up and, you know, are you the sort that has a coffee before you go riding? Like, what does a typical day on the trail look like?
Let's start with the evening. Like when I'm in my tent, like getting ready to sleep, like I planned out the day ahead, like where I find supermarkets, water stops, and what would be like a good spot for camping. Like I looked on Google Maps where like forests or if there even is a campsite or what else. And then in the morning, I usually got up or tried to get up at 7 o'clock. When I was like at a campsite, of course, I was like sleeping in a bit longer. But when I was like wild camping, I was trying my best to like move quickly and no one finds me. I usually did not really eat breakfast. Like I'm not a big morning eater. I just like start with some snacks during the day. And at some point, of course, I have like a supermarket stop where I resupply. And I usually just like eat snacks during the day. And yeah, I ride then my about 8 hours and tried to cover 75 kilometers at least. And yeah, and around 6 o'clock kind of, I arrived at my spot. Sometimes it was also 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And yeah, I did not really do regular like coffee breaks or restaurant breaks like other cyclists did. And it also took me like 2 hours at least more a day to cover the same distance as a cyclist. So, yeah.
Yeah, it would do too. Because you just can't generate anywhere near as much.
Yeah.
You're probably going to blow my mind with this anyway, but what sort of maximum speed could you get to on a unicycle?
Like there's a world record and an official that a friend of mine made. It's like about 50 kilometers an hour. Something like this. But this is just crazy.
I'm just picturing your legs.
Yeah.
That is a super fast sewing machine, right? That is like foot flat on the sewing machine pedal to thread up the bobbin, like like I cannot imagine the cadence.
Yeah, I think with my unicycle, I could maybe get up to 30 comfortable, I guess. But I'm like mostly like 20 kilometers was kind of the maximum on this trip. And my average speed when it was like very good, it was like 14 kilometers an hour. You also can't really maintain like high speed when you're like going for 100 kilometers and for 100 days in a row. So, yeah.
No, it's not sustainable. But, you know, I reflect back on, and I always know this, the difference with, say, like mountain biking and even gravel riding or something, your average speed is so vastly different. It's just not even a metric that I would even bother paying attention to. And the distances you cover, you're so right. They're so different. But it's a different type of riding as well. It's not about high speeds. It's not about, obviously, on a trip like this, you do want to cover a certain distance, but you don't even have it in your mind that you're going to try and cover ridiculous distances each day, if that makes sense. It's sustainable distances for you.
Yeah.
Did you use your previous experiences with unipacking on your other trips then to figure out in your pre-planning phase for the European Divide Trail of what would be feasible for you and how long you could think of how long it would take you to complete it?
Exactly. So that's also what I had in mind when I did my trip through Germany. So I also like saw how much kilometers I did each day, and I figured out 75 kilometers would be possible a day. And so my overall average was, I think, was like 77 in the south, like for the riding days, and about 93 in the northern half of the European Divide Trail on average.
And when you talk about the European Divide Trail in that way, Becky, is it because it's markedly different from south to north? And where does that difference really come in? Like, where do you all of a sudden feel like you've just crossed over into another trail?
Yeah, it definitely, like, I had like a very big cut for me. It was like I went 6 days off track around Hanover. And yeah, that's also like where the trail changes. It gets from like lots of steep uphills, lots of hiking a bike, just like perfect riding, perfect smooth riding. And I always refer to the north of the European Divide Trail as the European Divide Trail, how it is in the descriptions. And like the south is like, it's not the European Divide Trail of the descriptions. It's like totally
Oh,
different.
wow. Would it be right then if we've got listeners who may be thinking of dipping their toe in the water and doing a section of the European Divide Trail, would you sort of advise them to ease into it? If you want to ease into it, do a few sections in the north?
Yeah, definitely. If you want to have it like easy riding, go for the north. And if you would like to get the best out of your full suspension mountain bike, do Spain. Yeah.
Even skip out some of France by the sounds of it, because some of France is pretty technical and not rideable as well.
Yeah, it's like it feels like from the French-Spanish border to the Jura mountains. It's really like it was more like we have to cover the distance. We have to go to that point, and like so between is not so nice. So
Okay.
yeah, it's, there are definitely parts where you feel like you're like covering distance to get to a more interesting place, and that's I think definitely most of France, I would say.
That would have been really hard from a motivation point of view. Did you find that hard from a motivation point of view? Like when it wasn't that interesting from a trail perspective?
Not really, because it also was sometimes then easier or more asphalt.
Yeah, okay.
And those sections really only make sense kind of when you're like aiming to do the whole thing.
Because would it ever be something that you would look to do in different types of trails? Do you ever see yourself as the sort of person that would see like a long distance route and want to do sections of it? And I guess the best way to equate that, for example, you know, if you look at hikers and through hikers, they might do sections of the Pacific Crest Trail or even like the Camino Trail or something like that. And consecutively over a few years work away at sections. Do you think you would ever do something similar unipacking?
Maybe, but I don't really think so. I'm more like into like finishing the whole thing in one go. That's really also motivation. I think it's more motivating, and
it would definitely have to be. Well, I mean, Becky, we talked about some of the low moments there and the rain in Spain and the hiker bikes and the technical trail that was meant to be rideable that really wasn't. What about some of the high moments there? Obviously, meeting others was a high moment, but what about some solo high moments?
yeah, definitely.
What were some of the other high moments that you just had to yourself? If you reflect back, those experiences, what were they like?
I think one was definitely in Sweden. I met other cyclists that did the European Divide Trail, and they recommended me a hut, like a free hut where you could just stay. Actually, you had to do like a 1 kilometer hike a bike through a swamp in order to get there. There was like no real path, and it was just forest. But they were saying, yeah, it's totally worth it. And actually, the hiker bike is because it's like mostly used by snow scooter riders in the winter. So they go over the lake or through the forest with their snow scooters. And in the summer, it's not really used. And like I had this little Swedish hut at a lake just entirely for myself. And yeah, it was like such a magical moment. I really felt like, yeah, I'm really like at peace, and like that's what I was like looking for, this connection with nature, and yeah, having like a little fire, and yeah, enjoying being alone and not having other people around. That's also sometimes what I really, really enjoy, just to know I'm alone and I can do what I want. And yeah.
Yeah, and I guess no pressure or expectations to make company and be social either. Like if you want to just get to camp, make dinner early, and then just do nothing, or if you need to get to camp and you need to make preparations for the next day, you don't feel like you have to be polite and make conversation with someone else who's camping next door.
Yeah, and it also was a very short day for me, so I had like an whole afternoon to enjoy it, and that was really a magic moment. And then also like I really had lots of times where I was riding late. So you get the sunset vibes kind of a bit. And this is also always very, very magical moment, I think, when you're like riding for the entire day. And sometimes the day was so shit, but like the last 10 kilometers when the light goes like more magical, magic happens and you're like, oh, it's so beautiful. It was totally worth to ride for so long.
Some natural event like that, and sunrises and sunsets and the light that's cast at that time, what you just said, it totally hits me in my heart, because it's definitely something that I've noticed myself on my own adventures, whether they're multi-day adventures, whether they're even just solo single-day rides. It's just a mood changer and generally a mood lifter. There's something powerful about Mother Nature that way, isn't there?
Yeah.
I love, Becky, that time of day where the clouds just change and they light up differently and the birds start speaking differently and the grass has the beautiful golden glow, or even that magic hour in the evening where, and you may not be riding, you might be at camp, but where the light in the sky is all of a sudden changing and it's sort of getting that dark bluey purple look to it and the stars are coming. Like, did you have those moments? Like, it would have been mega uplifting, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. There were like, I think, always the most incredible moments, like when it's getting close to sunset. And also like when I'm riding at home, it's mostly like I ride in the evening hours and I go for the sunset. And yeah, it's always so magical.
Yeah, I was going to ask you there, are you more a sunset or a sunrise person? So sunset is for you.
I'm more a sunset person. Like in the afternoon is usually like my daily height for riding and doing sports.
Yeah.
But also I had like one morning experience in Portugal that was like very similar, because like the sun was pretty low still, and yeah, it was like a beautiful morning, and then it got into a very hot and sunny day. Yeah.
But it was beautiful there for the moment.
For the morning, yeah.
Finishing something so big like a European Divide Trail, such a big route, did you find as you were getting closer and closer to the end point, were you looking forward to it being done? Like, had you ridden enough on the trail that you were looking forward to the end, or were you was there any sadness that it was going to be over soon?
It kind of was a bit in between, I would say. So if the European Divide Trail would have been longer, I would not have minded to ride another 1,000 kilometers.
Wow.
But I was also like happy to go home and see my friends and do stuff with them again. And yeah, it took some time to reflect also when I finished. Like when I finished, I was like, okay, that's it. I can't really believe it. That's the finish. And also I think it would not make any more sense to continue, because also like the network kind of broke. It did not really broke, but you're not really anymore on the European Divide Trail. You don't have your friends riding with you. You don't meet any other European Divide Trail riders where you could share each other's journey with. That is definitely something I would have missed. And actually, then I flew to Oslo. I stayed at another unicyclist's home for 2 days, and my original plan was to ride to Copenhagen and then to the south of Denmark, and then take a ferry to Germany. But when I was in Oslo, I just had this feeling like I need to get home. I don't want to be riding anymore. Then I took the train to Copenhagen, visited another friend. And from Copenhagen, I did another 2 days and 200 kilometers to the ferry to Germany.
Wow.
And it really took some motivation, but it was really a moment where I was like, I felt totally in peace with myself, was totally happy with what I have done, and also happy about the decision not to like continue crazy riding. And actually also my unicycle was like slowly falling apart. Like I had to do, like the wheel building was not the best that I did. And yeah.
All that product testing that you didn't realize you were doing. It's like the gear reviews you can do on that bike now, or the unicycle.
Yeah, but actually like I broke lots of spokes in the northern section, but it was also a little like I should have put in some spoke washers in it, and I did not, and yeah. So I broke lots of spokes.
Did you have any problems with your rims at all? Like none of your rims started cracking or anything like that if you had some spoke failures?
No, not at all. No.
That's good.
I think I was like at a very good point where I was like, okay, it's good that the European Divide Trail is over. It was like a very nice time, and I really loved that chapter of my life, but it's also something that has to come to an end. And like, I'm not really sad about it, that it ended. I'm more like happy about it, that I did it. And yeah.
Proud as well, I hope. Do you look back on it with a big sense of pride?
Yeah, and I'm very proud of me. Like, also, like, looking back, even when I was on the European Divide Trail riding the north, I was like, how could I made it through the south? It's like mind-blowing how many kilometers I did each day in which terrain and stuff. It's like, yeah, it was definitely hard, and I'm definitely proud of myself how my body was capable of doing that and doing this entire trip. And I also like pushed my boundaries a lot, kind of. And like looking back at my 2021 self, beginning of 2021, I would say of myself, I'm crazy in 2023.
Wow, like just how much you've developed as a rider and what challenges you were willing to take on.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's so awesome to be able to reflect back on that, Becky, and to be able to have that sense of pride with something. I've got goosebumps for you just thinking about that, because it's one of those things, you know, when we were talking earlier, we were joking about, you know, sometimes you're on your home trails and things that you used to do and you go, oh, no, not up to that anymore. But my gosh, think about this European Divide Trail, perhaps not legitimately 99.9% rideable.
No.
But also doing it, and I know we talked about the awesome part that was unexpected, which is probably the community that grew around the trail and the people that were on it that you made friends from and the camaraderie that came from that as well. But even deciding before you know that that's going to be the case, that as a solo female, you're going to go on your unicycle on a 7,500 kilometer adventure across Europe, off-road, wild camping, that's just brilliant. I love that. It's boldness and it's choosing adventure, not saying no, saying yes. Like, I love that. There's so much to be taken about that and so much inspiration people can take from what you've done.
Yeah.
Do you think, had you not had the experiences of, say, the Arizona Trail, the trips through Scotland, the trips through Germany, do you think the European Divide Trail would have been something that you ever would have aspired for?
I don't think so. I think it was really good that I had like 4,000 kilometers of previous experience before going on the European Divide Trail. I think it's possibly to do the European Divide Trail without any unipacking experience, but then you really need to calculate in way more time.
Yeah, and not being able to do it as quickly.
Yeah, I think I definitely not would have been able to do it in 92 riding days. I probably would have taken way more days in order to finish.
With the benefit of looking back then and reflection, if there was anything that you could change about the way or what you did on the European Divide Trail, if you had to do it again, I'm not saying you're going to, but if you were told you need to do this again, what would you change?
Definitely like unicycles that's more reliable. Like the brake problem would need to be like completely solved. And yeah, I think then also like the European Divide Trail, I think it needs also a little bit of an update, I would say. It also can't be like this European Divide Trail from 2019 or 20. I don't know when Andy wrote it. I think it needs an update because also like trails are changing. Stuff is being built, roads are disappearing and stuff. So this definitely needs to be taken into account. And also like private properties are putting up signs that people should not go through there because they are all of a sudden like each day a cyclist is coming through there. Definitely the European Divide Trail should take this into account, I would say, to make it like more enjoyable for riders. Yeah, and also some hike-a-bike sections that are really, really gnarly and does not make any sense at all. I would have wanted to know more about them beforehand. And luckily I met Leonie and Jan who were like more active on the Facebook group and in exchanging with other riders. So they knew lots of stuff that was really not enjoyable. So they also like give me clues like, yeah, you should probably go and bypass that stuff. And so.
Yeah. And I guess the more that more people ride it and the more that community grows, I guess the more opportunity for updates to potentially get out there and for information not to just to be something that you happenstance across, that you by luck.
Genau.
You know about something before it happens.
Yeah, and actually like for Portugal, there were like lots of private properties that where the trail goes through. And there's actually like a local rider who proposed alternative route through Portugal, and it's also on Komoot now. Like it's not integrated in the official European Divide Trail, but you can find it on Komoot. And it's like a way better alternative. You don't go lots through private land, because in Portugal you also have lots of dogs, and this can get very dangerous.
Dogs don't know how to deal with people on bikes. I don't know what they're like. Well, I imagine they're very much the same with someone on a unicycle. What was your strategy for dealing with dogs then?
I just ignored them and went past and mostly riding. Yeah, it luckily always went good, but a friend of mine, she got bitten by a dog actually on the trail. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Not good.
So it's real danger.
It is unfortunately. And it's not just something where you go, don't be scared and just go on. Like, there are unfortunate incidents that do occur with dogs. And when you have things like rabies that you need to be aware of as well, there's health concerns that you need to worry about, which isn't great. I don't want to focus on the negative things that would put us off taking on adventure. We're definitely more into embracing it. But I also understand what you're saying there about there's setting a trail, but then there's also realizing that updates and changes and different approaches perhaps need to be considered and made as well.
And you should always put your own mental and physical well-being above doing the trail exactly how it is. Like, you should always consider, is it really good for you to go on that path?
That's a really mature response to have as well, and a mature question to know that you should be asking yourself.
Yeah.
Does that come from experience, do you think? Or is that just how you've always approached something?
My experience on the European Divide Trail, I realized it on meter 500, kind of. Like, it started on a nice gravel road, then it went down a coastal path with lots of rocks. And actually I was like saying, okay, I'm just pushing that. I'm doing the European Divide Trail, but actually it was so windy that day that even like pushing was so dangerous, and I always was already seeing myself like twisting my ankle on a rock or so. So I walked like 20 meters on the trail and was like, no, it's not possible with this strong wind. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, again, you have to think ahead. If you're going to be on this trail for 90 days, 100 days, whatever it's going to be, and you're doing this on your own, you need to not be injured doing it, obviously.
Yeah.
Smart decisions. Absolutely. This is a hypothetical question. Say that you could pick the perfect time of the year to do the trail in either direction. Would you ever have a temptation to take the trail on in the opposite way?
I don't think I will do the European Divide Trail again. Yeah. In the next years, at least not. So it would definitely take another 10 years for me to ever consider to do it again. It's like a long journey.
Yeah, and I was going to say, is it because of its length, or is it because you as a person aren't motivated to revisit something you've already done?
Both, kind of. Yeah, I've already done it, and it's like 3 months of riding. It's definitely like the hardest physical thing I've ever done in my life, and yeah.
And I mean, we're only realistically, listeners, I think, Becky, you're only like 5 or 6 weeks since completing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the immediate aftermath is where you feel the physical toll the most, but you do at the moment feel, even this time after the fact, do you feel that physical toll? Do you feel on your body and physically and mentally that you've been through something, if that makes sense?
Yeah, kind of. I'm feeling like my energy really dropped, kind of, that I have like during the day and doing sports. It's like, really, I need like a little break and calm down and like not really, I don't really have the feeling that I have to ride my 100 kilometers each day to feel good. I could totally went from doing 100 kilometers each day to nothing. It was not a huge problem for me.
Yeah. And I guess a sign to know that when you're fully recovered mentally and physically is when you're jumping out of your bed, ready to go ride a trail on your unicycle, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've done like 3 or 4 rides in total, I guess, on my unicycle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you miss different things? Like, did you miss camping? There's the physical act, and I can understand not wanting to do that, but when you're camping for so long, you're probably thankful to be in a bed and in a shelter. But
yeah,
but it's come up a few times now. You do these things to be at one with nature and to be immersed in nature. Have you missed being out in nature day after day?
Not really, because I've like the last 2 weekends I have been out camping with friends, so it was like not really missing it. And then in the week I'm like, oh, nice to have a bed. And I'm also like sleeping with wide open window to have like feel the air and feel it a bit like being outside. But yeah, I think when it comes to winter and I have to close my window, then it definitely will feel hard to not have like the fresh air constantly coming in. than what I had on previous trips. Yeah.
I could imagine, because winter, and again, forgive me, I don't have a context of what winter looks like where you are, but is unicycling something that you do at any time of the year, or is for you winter is like unicycling season is over for a few months?
Like I usually unicycle to the winter, but when we have snow, I nowadays do cross-country skiing, where I go with my unicycle, but just with my skis. And yeah, because unicycling in snow is like a constant falling and getting up again and falling and like concentrating lots.
Is there an equivalent of like a fat bike for unicycles?
Yeah, there's.
Wow. Okay. So you can get a unicycle with a wheel that's got thick and is more traction.
Yeah, it would be possible. Yeah.
Becky, I'll be wrapping this up really shortly, but something that I wanted to ask you was, if there's my listeners and they're like, speaking to a unicyclist has piqued their interest about unicycling. And we spoke at the start of the show that you got into the sport at the age of 10, you got a unicycle for Christmas and you got into it. What about if someone like as an adult or something says, hey, I wouldn't mind trying unicycling out? What's the best bit of advice you could give them, or where would you point them about how to get into this part of the sport?
Yeah, so there are some good YouTube tutorials that are worth a watch. You can nowadays learn anything on YouTube.
Yes.
There are unicycle tutorials around, and what I really recommend is you have to be patient. Unicycling is usually not something that you learn in 1 hour. You need at least like 10 hours for being able to ride like 10 meters or so. So you really have to put in the time and the patience, and don't expect it to be possible right away. It really takes time, and you need to be patient. And yeah, be patient is my advice.
It makes sense, like what you were saying, when you transitioned to that big 36-inch wheel, it took you, a experienced unicyclist, so much time to just learn how to get up and going on it.
Yeah, like with the weight, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And I've been riding 36-inch unicycles for 6 years beforehand, or 7 years. So it was just because of the weight.
And how to counterbalance with the extra weight on there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Unicycling, it's putting in the time and being patient. That's really what makes the magic happen.
Oh, I like that. Well, I am going to start wrapping it up. So I've got a few questions that I ask all my guests. A newish one that's come up recently is because I am creating a music playlist for Seek Travel Ride, and I'm asking all of my guests to nominate a song that would best reflect their trip. And if you had to pick a song that would be a soundtrack, so a song that would be a soundtrack to your European Divide trail, what would that song be for you?
Yeah, it's definitely, I listen to lots of songs, and I was like thinking about this question, and I would like pick the song which I finished with actually, and it's the song called Borders from the Norwegian band Kalanda. It's like really this connecting with nature, what's like a big theme with it. And yeah.
You had that song as your ending song on your trail?
Yeah, kind of. It wasn't like I had like a European Divide trail playlist, like about like songs that were really like motivating. Like there were just like 5 or 6 songs on it, and like I was like playing that in the last few kilometers, and that was the song where it's flopped up when I was ending. And also when it's also has something about the ocean in it in the song, and was when I was like seeing the waves of the ocean, or at the finish, it was like it was like truly magic.
That must have been a mega moment for you. I mean, actually, and it's normally a question I do ask. We spoke about reflecting back with pride at reaching the finish, but what was it actually like just rolling the last kilometre, seeing that physical finish line and reaching it? What was that like? Were you emotional there, or?
No, not really. So a bit, but it really takes some time to reflect on it. That's happening now. It really took some weeks to like feel it kind of for me. But like the last 10 kilometers were so hard. It was like the entire day, it felt like 10 horses or 7,600 kilometers trying to drag me back to Portugal because of like strong headwind and so. And but when I was there, I was definitely happy and was like, okay, this is the end. And but I really took some time to reflect it and to really realize this is the finish. And
that is mega. Becky, if people want to follow along look back through your European Divide Trail journey, watch those videos and perhaps, follow you to see what future adventures are ahead, how can they best do that? Like we talked about Instagram. What is your Instagram handle there and where else are you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram. You can find me under my name, or my Instagram title is actually like Becky die Bergziege. It means Becky the mountain goat in English.
Very good, because that is your nickname actually, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my nickname.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And then I'm on YouTube. So just look up my name, Rebekka Wiedener, and you will find me. So I'm planning to do some videos for the European Divide Trail, but no idea when this will happen. Probably somewhere in the winter. Definitely would take some time to edit. Yeah, but there's like more European Divide Trail content coming out. And on my Instagram, I currently have like every 10 days or so, I put out some pictures and a short text of my journey.
Awesome. Well, I will link to both of those accounts in our show notes for our listeners to follow along with your adventures. All right, it's time to wrap up with the final 2 questions. I asked this, Becky, of all my guests to end the show with. So the first one is, if you were given the choice one day that you would have to cycle perpetually up a climb, or alternatively, you could choose to perpetually cycle into a constant headwind, which one would you choose?
Definitely the uphill, because I really like uphill unicycling, and I really find it rewarding when you're like going up and up and up. And yeah,
if the Unicycling Uphill World Champion wasn't going to say uphill, I didn't know who would. So that's a predictable result there.
Yeah.
The next question I have to ask you, I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. One day you are given the choice, you'll be cycling for 4 hours on this day, and you can choose to cycle 4 hours on your own or 4 hours in the company of other people. Which one would you choose?
Oh, that's a hard one. Like, I enjoy both, actually. Like, I enjoy riding on my own, and then I enjoy lots of riding with other people and talking with other people. That's like such a hard question.
I have to make you choose a choice.
Yeah, I think it's probably riding with other people because that's more motivating, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. Because see, I actually didn't pick that, because I picked up that, you're comfortable being on your own. You like being in your own company. I thought, I wonder whether then, riding on your own is what fills you up. So I guess it's because you know that it's only for 4 hours, right? You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Rebekka Wiedener, it has been an absolute pleasure. I have come away from this learning a bit more about unicycles. I've learnt that you can get ones with gears. That the one that you had didn't have brakes that worked too well. But also maybe if I ever decide to give it a go, I think I'll definitely be hitting you up, because patience is something that personally I'm lacking in. So I might need to hit you up for some extra tips there. But look, I just want to say a big, massive thank you. We've talked about reflecting back on adventures and being able to look back on them with pride. And Becky, this is such an amazing achievement. A lot of what you've done on a unicycle is an amazing achievement, but the European Divide Trail, 7,500 kilometers off-road on challenging terrain on a unicycle, you should be damn well proud of that. Thank you so, so much for sharing your story with Sea Travel Ride.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks for having me.
That was such an enjoyable chat that I had there with Rebekka. And I must say, I've come away with it with so much more knowledge about the world of unicycling and so much respect for what Becky actually achieved. It sounds like the European Divide Trail was next level, and the maturity which she set out on and did this trail and made decisions for herself which were the right ones for her, getting to the finish line, that's no mean feat. So well done, Rebekka, and thank you for sharing your story with our listeners. If you've been enjoying listening to the show, make sure you follow it in your podcast player app so that you're notified when new episodes drop. A new episode is released every week. And of course, if you'd like to give the show a rating and review, or even get in touch with me to let me know which one's been your favourite so far and why, I'd really love to know that as well. Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.